powered by nuclear energy.
Hi, this is DJ Mondo, and welcome back to the Atomic Luau. And welcome back to the Atomic Luau Labs and to my work table, where I'm going to continue a story here that you might have been following along with. If you've been watching these videos, you know that I made a recent purchase of the Gemini PMX 20 Performance 4-channel mixer. This is my first 4-channel mixer for the Atomic Luau Labs, and I liked the features that it has. I also like that it has a reasonable price for a reasonable price for a mid-range mixer that has some pro features on it, like effects, send returns, microphone, got your cue buttons and everything like that. And this is a really pro featured mixer, but at a really good mid-range price. And the only trouble with it is that it doesn't have a lot of ready-made mappings for some of the software that I'm going to use it with. I don't know if you guys know, but I'm more of a Tractor user, Native Instruments Tractor user, and there's no specific MIDI mapping for all of the controls on this unit for Native Instruments Tractor. And I've had to learn, and I'm not a big MIDI mapping guy, so I've had to learn a whole lot about MIDI mapping in order to use this with some of the software that I'm going to use it for. But while I was discovering that, I decided that also I wanted to use this with Ableton Live 11. And I thought maybe if I could create a template in Ableton Live 11 that uses, that MIDI maps all of the controls on this, I'd be able to use it more in the style that I like to use things. Like basically I'm kind of a guy that works with loops rather than complete songs, and spontaneous loop mashing, kind of in the style of Richie Hawtin and performers like him. And also I can attach things to this, attach external hardware to this and feed into it, and also use the effects processing in here. But I became obsessed with mapping this, with creating a mapping template for this in not just in Tractor, but more so in Ableton Live 11, which is where I'm really going to use a whole lot of loops. So I wasn't having too much success at first. I stumbled a bit with some of the mappings because there were some mappings that I wasn't able to use exactly the way I wanted to. Like I couldn't change, like for example, in and you'll see what I mean momentarily when I show you Ableton 11. But changing the focus of in session view of Ableton doesn't change the focus of this piece of hardware, and I've had to find workarounds in order to do the things that I wanted to do. But the good news is I've come up with a really great mapping for Ableton Live 11 that uses almost all of the controls that you see here on the hardware. And I'm having a great time doing this. I've come up with some great ideas after doing a deeper dive and learning not just about this controller, but also about Ableton Live 11 and how it processes effects and things there. But I'm going to show you the mapping here. If you're going to watch this whole video, you might want to settle in, because there's some details that I'm going to have to go into that's going to make this video a little bit long. But I am so proud of what I've done here that I've got to tell somebody, and you're elected. So let's break it down here to some of the major controls here. What are the major controls here? There's that large button there, which is the track search buttons, how you're going to start the clips in Ableton. And the load tracks button at the top is how you're going to, I've created a special purpose for those. You've got each channel here that that's 1, 3, on the left and 2 and 4 channel on the right. And you'll see how that's going to be represented in Ableton. The original purpose for these cue buttons along the left and right sides here, I was originally going to try to use those in order to launch the clips, but I've come up with a better use for those that you'll see in Ableton. And you'll also, the crossfader is also mapped. And also, I don't know if you remember, I told you the last time if you're going to use this, because this also has a built-in sound processor. So this is the sound card that I'm using. So, but if you need to use it as a sound card, you have to have those USB lights on each channel specified so that they will show up in Ableton. But the mappings that I've made are great, and I'm going to show you what it is now. I might have to go back and forth between the item here and the screen of my computer, but hopefully you'll love this as much as I'm loving it. So what I've done here is created a representation of that item here, created in the session view of Ableton. I've created 4 tracks. Each track holds 8 clips, which I think is sufficient in order to make a good session of music here. But under those tracks here, and of course, if you're going to do the mappings, if you're going to do the MIDI mappings here, what you'll do is highlight this MIDI section here, which opens up all of the MIDI mappings for each section here, and you just map these to the hardware on the controller over here, and I'll let you know what's going on with each one of these here. So first and foremost, I mapped each channel, and for each channel, for each of the 4 channels, what I've done here is I've given each one a its own EQ here. Hold on one second here. Okay, so for each channel, I've assigned the EQ3 EQ processor for each one of those, and I've mapped those to the corresponding EQ knobs on each channel here. So for example, these knobs here control the EQ, the low, mid, and high, and they're mapped here on each channel. So 4 channels, 4 EQs, and each one is mapped to this corresponding knobs on the controller. So here, 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 and here. And again, 1 and 3 on the left, 2 and 4 on the right. Okay, so we've got the EQs mapped. Now, how are we going to launch the clips? Well, we're going to launch the clips using. I was going to try and use these buttons here to launch the clips, but you can't map a single button to more than one MIDI mapping without triggering both of them at the same time. So how do you get around that problem? What I did here instead is when you open up the MIDI mappings here, you can, each channel comes up with a play button on its own. So I used the cue button of each channel mapped to the play button of that corresponding channel in Ableton in order to launch that column of clips, but only the one that's highlighted. And how do you highlight those clips? You highlight the clips using the selector button, the selector knob, which is the track search, which is also a button as well. So you use that to select your clips vertically, and then the Q button to launch the corresponding clip in that track. And again, I did that for each track. So that's how you can launch individual tracks without launching an entire scene, which is in Ableton, the scene is all of the clips that are across. You can launch those all at the same time, but I don't want to launch a scene. I just want to launch a clip from each one of these tracks. So, so mapping it the way I mapped it here using the track search and the Q button of each channel is how I launch the clips. And it took me a while to figure that out, but works very well. You can navigate all of these clips and launch each one of them individually without having to resort to launching an entire scene. So quite fun. All right, now, how do you stop the clips without stopping the entire selection? Okay, what you do is you map again, back in MIDI mode. And let me open up MIDI again. Back in MIDI mode, each clip, that little square there with the 3 on it there, that's the stop button for the track. So what do we map that to? We map that to the load decks button here of each channel. So we can stop individual tracks without stopping the entire ensemble, and start them without launching an entire scene. Again, took me a while to figure that out, but I really like the way I'm doing it. It seems kind of natural. And there you go, a whole 4 tracks there to launch all of those clips. So, and that came out pretty good, and that's in addition to mapping the individual sliders for the volume of each clip. So that works quite well. And also there's the crossfader is mapped as well, because if you'll see down at the bottom of each track here, you've got an A and a B, which is the side of the crossfader that each track is mapped to. So I've got the 1 and 3 mapped to side A, 3 and 4 mapped to side to B. And so I can crossfade between those 2 sides of it. Excellent. All right, now, so that was the first problem to overcome. The second problem to overcome was, how do I apply effects to each track without having to apply them to all tracks? Well, that's where I had to do a deeper dive into Ableton with regard to their send and receive channels. Now, so how did I handle that problem? Well, it's like this. Ableton uses what's called return channels in order to apply effects. You use the return channels to kind of apply effects to the items that are going out. And basically what that means is that while these tracks are playing, you can use these knobs here to send those, the output from these tracks over to these effects channels that will take those tracks and apply the effects that you put on those channels. Now see, and by default, when you start a new Ableton project, you already have reverb and delay on there. Okay, that's fine. And so I added auto filter, saturator, and flanger. And flanger phaser on this one here. And those correspond to A, B, C, D, and E. And the more, when you turn these knobs here, and when you activate the send and receive, and you turn these knobs on each track, that sends more of the signal to each one of those effects. And what I did instead of mapping knobs to these on the tracks, what I did instead was use the effects send button here to activate all of the sends on a track. And then I used these up here, these knobs up here, to activate the return, and use this button to activate the return, and then use this knob to activate the degree of dry wet to that return effects. And it gets kind of confusing, but I'll show you what it means. Basically what it means is that these items here now, and you'll see that C is already active. Don't worry about that for a second. That's a separate explanation. I'll let you know. But you see here on this track, which is right now, it's a drum track. When I activate this effects button on that track, the white one there, you'll see all of those items activate. A, B, D, and E will all activate, meaning it's ready to receive return signal from all of the effects over here in this column. But right now it's not receiving them because I haven't activated the effects yet with this button, for example. And if we look at the effects column, look at the, for example, look at the reverb column here, and this button turns on and off the reverb effect. So it's on, it's off, it's on, it's off. Okay, so now we've activated it. So now once we activated it, the knob here is mapped to actually two controls on Ableton. That knob is mapped to the amount of send and receive for that effect for reverb, which turns on the effect and sends whatever channel is sending out from channel A, from return channel A, is sending out to this one. It's receiving it from whatever it is, but also it's also mapped to the dry wet on the effect itself, on the reverb effect itself. So if I want to apply more, I'll turn it more. And so it goes from 0 send to all the way up to the top send, and also 0 wet all the way up to the top of the dry wet with just one knob. And that's how I send, that controls the amount of the effect I send to each one. And I did that for all of them, for reverb, delay, saturator, and phaser flanger. Not for auto filter though. What I did is I handled that separately for each one, using return channel C. And that's mapped to the filter button down here, the filter knob down here at the bottom for each channel, and that's applied for each one. So 4 channels have filter and all those effects mapped. I'm not really sure if I'm satisfied with the amount of effect that is applied with each one. It seems kind of low to me. I don't really, I don't really hear as much of the effect as I want, so I might have to remap it a different way. But right now, I like the way it's going. I like that I've at least got it this way. So that's my basic setup here, and so I was really happy about that. So what I decided to do is I put all of my tracks in a single group here, so I can get those out of the way. So if I can open and close the tracks in this group here. But then I was thinking, okay, well, I've got those mapped. What am I gonna do with these buttons here on the left and the right? What could I apply those to? I could apply those to something else. So I decided to create some sample tracks. And what I did was I created 2 sample tracks and applied those to those buttons, applied those launchers in the sample tracks to these buttons down here. And I just dropped some samples in there. And looking at each track here, basically the way I mapped them is the way I mapped them for the samples is the following. Basically, I mapped them to trigger that sample. No quantize on them, because if you put quantize on them, they're gonna wait until the next beat in order to play. So, but I want them to play immediately when I trigger them. So, so on this first track here, I've got some drum kicks and some congas and stuff like that, and then I've got some of my other samples some vocal samples that I made myself in Native Instruments Machina that I took and I dragged and dropped from Native Instruments Machina and dropped them into here. So in order to trigger those. So I got 2 tracks of samples that I can play at any time. And then I got some repeat on like repeats on the claps and repeats on the hi-hats and stuff like that. Again, that's my homage to Richie Hawtin. He does that a whole lot. So, but this template, and now I've saved it, and this template is ready basically to have all of the samples that are in it replaced. The samples and the loops and can easily be replaced by samples and loops from any other application. The only downfall here, the only thing that I think would really like to do is use the looping effects, the loop size here somehow, maybe on the output, on the master output. So, but I've got 2 of those to maybe change the size of a loop, but that's not really imperative right now. But I really like the way this came out here, and this template here is going to make I'm going to have a whole lot of fun with this template, transferring loops over to the 4 channels, and also dropping samples into these sample track channels right here. But and then the effects can also be applied to these channels right here as well. So, but I had to learn a whole lot about MIDI mapping. But the thing that really confused me was the return channels in order to apply the effects. But I really like the way this is going. I'm going to test run this a little bit later and drop some more videos. And but as long as this template right here, did I save this as a template? You just swap the sounds out of it and you're ready to go on this fantastic 4-channel pro level but reasonably priced controller, the PMX 20 performance mixer from Gemini. And I am really pleased with this. I think this is a great value for the money. It's got a lot of pro features on it. If you're willing to apply yourself, you can, and you really know the software that you're working with, you can get this to do a whole lot of things. But like I said, my original purpose for it was to use it with Tractor, but I got caught up in using it in Ableton, and I think I'm having much more success using this with Ableton than I would have using it with Tractor. Particularly the way I work and the way I like to play with loops and things. But it is very versatile. You can map it to just about anything, and if you're innovative, you can have a whole lot of fun with this. But anyway, that's it for now. I've talked a whole lot about this, and hope you understood me. But thank you, Gemini, for putting out this great 4-channel mixer, my first dive into 4-channel mixing. And the tests have been going great so far, and I'm gonna definitely be dropping videos on this pretty soon. So this is DJ Mondo. Thanks for dropping by my workbench on the Atomic Luau, and I'll see you next time. Let me know, and let me know if you've used this mixer before, and what have you mapped it to? Have you used any mixer, and what have you mapped it to? But yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.
Powered by nuclear energy.